I'd had two novellas that came out around that time, which came through from the mentorship program, and they were picked up by a small press in the US, and they basically sort of got my name out there as a writer. So having that coinciding with Witch Hunts at the same time was pretty fortuitous, and it just really spurred me on to keep writing. So probably over subsequent years from there up until probably last year, the year before, I was writing pretty heavily. So I wrote probably two more novellas and another two novels. One of them being Hollow House.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah, and so I was writing quite heavily, but in the last couple of years, I've sort of been more drawing than writing.
Okay.
Not that I've had writer's block, but I've just had other things sort of going on in the background. I'm also the president of the Australian Horror Writers Association now, so
wow.
I've been busy with that.
What does that title entail? What are the responsibilities as a president for a Horror Writers Association?
Well, yeah, quite a lot. Making the big decisions about things. Basically, when I took on the presidency, we were sort of in a bad state financially, so it was just a matter of getting things back on track. And we provide services to our authors like the mentor program, the short story competition, and we also run like Shadows Awards, which are like the Australian version of the Stokers. So we do a lot throughout the year to sort of help people get into horror writing, and that's how it's basically me giving back for what they did for me way back when, and I was lucky enough to be a mentee.
Excellent. Now, was your collection Vaudeville and Other Nightmares? That's one of your earliest collections?
Yes, so it was the first one. It came out in 2013, but I just re-released it, a revised edition with some additional stories, and I've illustrated every story. Just an accompanying illustration. I haven't drawn the entire thing, but that was published locally here. I met a guy who was just sort of getting into publishing, and I said, look, I'm interested in re-releasing Vaudeville as maybe an illustrated edition. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So it's out in paperback and hardback now.
Nice. And
it's been pretty well received, and that was fun, doing about 30 odd illustrations to go with the stories.
What made you decide to do a collection of stories instead of a novel for that?
Well, when it first came out, I had the novellas, and I'd had probably half a dozen short stories published as well through various magazines, online and print. And I don't know, I just thought it was time. I wasn't ready to do the novel, and but I wanted to put something out that was, a good sized book. And I thought, let's do the collection. I thought I had a good selection of stories in there, and it sort of showcased my abilities. And I did the front cover artwork as well, so it was just sort of one of the first projects that I really got into before sort of getting ready for the novel.
How many stories did you have in the collection?
So at that point, I think it was like 23, 24 stories in there. And the revised edition has an additional 6 stories in there.
Oh, because those weren't enough. Yeah, let's just throw in 6 more.
Yeah, so some years had passed between those two editions, and I'd had a few more stories published since then. So, yeah, and I thought when I first brought it out, I did think about doing it as an illustrated edition, but I don't think I had the time because I was probably doing witch hunts at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, my right hand was about to fall off from all the drawing.
Of course. I know what that's like.
Yep.
And circling back to Hollow House.
Yes.
You mentioned how it came about. How long did it actually take to write?
It probably took me the better part of a year to write, but
Really?
there was a big gap between actually coming up with the idea and me actually sitting down to write it. So that incident that I was referring to previously, that was way back in 2004, something like that. So it wasn't until 2015 that I actually decided I would write this novel. And this was my first novel, and I knew that in that gap, I just wasn't ready to write the novel or write a novel at all. I just wanted to focus on perfecting my craft and trying to get more short stories published. But yeah, about 2015, I decided, okay,
You're ready.
it's time for me to do this. And I think it was the first time that I'd ever written anything where it just flowed out of me, because I had that background and that real event to draw from. And I knew early on that I didn't want this book or the story to be about this particular house. I wanted to make the focal point all the other houses in the street and all the different people who live in those houses. And I focused on things like family abuse. So there was a family in one house where the father was, sort of emotionally abusing his kids. And then I had another house where a young girl had, attempted suicide. And so I wanted to make the other people living in this street to be as real as possible and to already have their own sort of issues and problems. And then this creepy house on the corner sort of feeds off of all of that and makes things a whole lot worse for them. So it's a little bit Lovecraftian as well. I sort of went with the cosmic over the traditional sort of, gothic haunted house sort of vibe. And it was real fun to write. And it did go on to get nominated for a Stoker Award for, first novel.
How did that feel?
Well, that was pretty cool. I sort of it came out of the blue, and I just went, "Oh, okay. I think I know what I'm doing." Sadly, it didn't go on to win, but just to be nominated is a huge privilege. Up against some, great writers. But I think it was really cathartic for me to write that. It was probably my way of emotionally dealing with that incident way back when, And so I'm really proud of Hollow House, and it certainly helped me spur me on to write more.
You said you designed the artwork for that? Is that what you were going to say?
I designed the cover art for that, and that was something really different. I sort of did more of a graphic design, photo manipulation rather than a traditional hand-painted thing.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And I've been fortunate enough to every book subsequent to that one to have to do the cover art for them. So that's pretty cool. That's, certainly helps me feel like I own them a bit more. And Hollow House, it went on to be printed as a limited edition book as well, which sold out, and that was pretty neat. Yeah, and that was through Thunderstorm Books over there, and I think they're in Arizona. And that sold out pretty quickly, and that was a real treat.
Excellent.
So it's been real fun writing and drawing and having complete sort of feeling like owning these books and playing a part in bringing them to life.
Do you find that either illustrating and or writing is cathartic most of the time for you, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, a lot of people deal with daily stresses by exercising or taking up sport or something like that. And I'd say the illustrating for me is my stress relief. It's just you just sort of sit down in front of a piece of paper or a laptop or something, and you just write or draw, and you just sort of disappear, and nothing seems to matter anymore apart from what you're doing in that moment. So, and I just love painting scary pictures and seeing how they turn out. Some of them don't turn out, a lot of them do, thank goodness. But it's just that fun in that process. And my kids come down sometimes and they see me painting something that doesn't look, it might be a vampire or something with, lots of blood all over it, and they might go, "Oh, that's gross." But they acknowledge that it's just part of my process, and it's what I like to do.
I wanted to ask about the Halloween Carnival Volume 3, when you're contributing.
Yeah.
That's a collection of stories. Do you discuss with the other authors of those stories? Is there some kind of discussion to say, okay, these are the kinds of stories, or you just pick?
No. So this was another one of those out of the blue things where I'd written a novella called The Last Night of October back in 2014. So it had already been published, and this publisher, Cemetery Dance, wanted to do like a big anthology of Halloween stories. Okay. And Lisa had actually written the introduction to my novella, and they contacted her about, do you know anyone who's written some Halloween stuff that we could use? And she said, yeah, try this guy Greg Chapman. He wrote this great novella that I did an intro for, and it'll be perfect. And so they contacted me and said, we'd like to use your story if that's all right. And I said, yeah, go for it. So it was just basically a collection of already published stories. But that, I think they're now, so they were only brought out as an ebook through Random House, but they're now bringing it out as a special sort of limited, a massive tome. I think it's 500, 600 pages or something like that. So, so that'll be a great day when that turns up in the mail. But yeah, that was another fun project with Last Night of October, because I did illustrations for that as well. I didn't do the front cover art. Another guy did that, but I was just so blown away by what he did. But I did the internal illustrations. So it was just just being in the right place at the right time with Halloween Carnival.
Nice. Let's get into your writing process.
Okay.
Then we'll get into your illustrating process. But let's start with writing. Now, do you do an outline of a story? Do you write with pen and paper first? Keyboard? Is there certain times of the day or night that you prefer to write?
So usually I just get the spark of an idea. Sometimes it can be just as simple as a word I might see somewhere, and it just gives me an idea or a picture. And I always write longhand first time around, whether it doesn't matter what sort of length the story is. And because I'm a pretty crap typist, even though I'm a journalist, I'm a rubbish typist. I think I'm one of those two-finger typists. So I'll handwrite everything and I'll edit as I go. And sometimes I'll go back through an entire story and rewrite it all over again, handwrite it. So it's just how I edit. A lot of people edit differently. They prefer to do it on screen. And I think it's because of my journalism days where I used to have to do everything on the screen. So this is, again, me disconnecting from that and making the writing process my own. So I'll sit there and happily write pages and pages and pages of a story out in pen until it